On the 14th of November 2025, I posted a video explaining why wealth taxes can't fix the system and how they could actually make inequality worse. If you want a wealth tax, please push past your impulses and watch this video to the end because I have some solutions in mind and everybody needs to hear this. Now, as I've explained before, I'm not against a wealth tax. Like many others, I just think it's time for the conversation to evolve. Because if the real goal is reducing inequality and building a fairer system, then wealth taxes alone are not enough. We've already established in my previous videos why a wealth tax is fragile. Because sometimes it's the wealthiest writing the legislation themselves. The wealthy can take advantage of loopholes and move their money offshore. They can also buy assets that increase in value faster than the wealth tax takes anything away, meaning they still get richer even after paying. And if thousands of people do this at the same time, suddenly the price of assets rises. Housing, land, and even basic utilities become more expensive. Closing these loopholes often means increased surveillance and tighter restrictions on the rest of us instead of accountability at the top. And if you haven't got a plan for redistribution, then what you get is just more money going back into the same system that concentrates wealth and keeps us all poor. Government bailouts, subsidies, billion-pound contracts, outsourcing, VIP lanes, more of the same. So if you're going to have a wealth tax, you need to have a government that's committed to solving the inequality problem, not just one that wants to win elections. Because short-term election cycles make them vulnerable to wealthy donors, media pressure, and public opinion. This isn't new. History shows us that wealth taxes are never permanent. It's only a matter of time before they are reduced, revised, or removed completely. Now, does that mean that all wealth taxes are pointless? Of course not. I'm not against them, and I'm not saying we should give up on them. But if we're serious about changing the system, we need to look beyond taxes. Because a wealth tax doesn't automatically lower bills, it doesn't guarantee fairer wages, affordable housing, or secure pensions. Because it doesn't put us in charge of the systems that determine our outcomes. Unless wealth taxes are part of a bigger plan to fund alternatives that we can actually feel, then they're symbolic at best. And symbols don't build prosperity, systems do. That's why we need to talk about ownership. The key issue with inequality is not just the imbalance of tax revenue, it's the imbalance of power. Wealth taxes attempt to close the revenue gap, but they don't address who controls resources, production, or decision-making. Ownership does. For instance, in a worker cooperative, the workers also own and control the organization. They decide how profits are used, how the business is run, and how value is distributed. That changes the entire logic of the economy. Instead of wealth being created by many and extracted by a few, it stays in the hands of those who create it. The model doesn't rely on redistribution after the fact. It prevents extreme concentration of wealth from happening in the first place. It also doesn't depend on short-term political cycles or enforcement of policies that can be undermined or removed. Once a worker cooperative is established, its structure ensures that wealth and decision-making remains with its members. Now imagine an economy made up of lots of these worker co-ops. This isn't theoretical, this is already happening. Mondragon is one of the most documented examples of cooperative economics. It's a network of worker cooperatives that channels 10% of its profits into a shared development fund. Not through government policy, but as a structural rule across its member businesses. That money is used to support education, community infrastructure, social welfare programs, and the creation of new co-ops across the region. The key difference is that this contribution is built into the structure of the enterprise, not enforced through government. Workers still receive good wages and strong job security. Businesses still remain competitive and profitable. But the surplus that would normally be extracted by external shareholders stays within the system. This model works beautifully because of proximity. The people contributing to the fund are also the people who benefit from it. They see the outcomes directly in the form of schools, healthcare, pensions, and job creation. They see where the money is going, which builds trust and makes redistribution self-sustaining. It's not framed as charity, and it doesn't rely on moral arguments about fairness. It works because it's rational. Everybody contributes, everybody benefits. If wealth taxes are going to be used, their value depends entirely on where the money goes. Taxation on its own does not guarantee better outcomes. If the revenue ends up reinforcing the same centralized, outsourced systems, it does nothing to reduce long-term inequality. A more strategic use of wealth tax revenue would be to use it to support structural alternatives. That includes the funding of converting businesses into cooperatives, establishing local finance systems, and creating legal or tax incentives for democratic ownership models. These are not theoretical ideas, these are existing examples of where policy has supported shared ownership successfully. If the goal is to shift the economy away from dependency on concentrated wealth and corporate control, then wealth taxes should be tied directly to policies that build new ownership pathways. Cooperatives reduce the need for reactive redistribution by embedding fairness at the point of production. They're not reliant on politicians, policies, or public goodwill to function. They work because the logic is built into the design. Shared risk, shared reward, and shared control. This approach is much more permanent, and it doesn't require us to wait for the ruling classes to do the right thing. It only requires participation at the ground level. The more people build or support cooperatives, the more the economy that puts people before profit becomes real. Wealth taxes might address the symptoms, but ownership addresses the cause. Without changing who owns and controls economic infrastructure, inequality will just keep reproducing itself, no matter how much money is taxed at the top.